Mr. Klaiberg, nice to meet you.
Oh, it's so nice to see
I'm
you.
delighted to
So
meet you
thrilled.
during these days of this 14th International Tchaikovsky Competition. And you've been selected as a chairman, honorary chairman for the jury.
And it was such a great honor. And when I received the letter from Ambassador Adeyev, I was so thrilled because that is a very great honor.
And you didn't expect?
I did not expect such a wonderful thing.
You've been a symbol for this Tchaikovsky competition since the very first competition. How do you feel to be an icon for this competition?
Well, I'm very honored, but I think it's probably because people may know me very well and feel my great love for Russian music, for Russia, Russian people, and they know I'm very sincere.
You know, after you won this first competition, there were, you know, sort of speaking all around the world about phenomenon of Vän Klaibern. How do you feel about that? Do you think it's appropriate to speak about this phenomenon? Or if so, what is the mystery of your phenomenon as a pianist, as a star of this competition?
I have no idea, but I'm so grateful, whatever you call it. I mean, I'm grateful to be wanted, and that is a great thrill that someone wants to hear me play. I'm always thrilled for that, and for whatever reason, I'm just thrilled.
Do you practice these days?
Yes, I practice. I haven't been for the last month or two because I've been very busy with some other things, but yes, oh yes.
What music do you prefer playing?
Oh, regular repertoire for. And you know, it's very strange because when I was 18, I was carefully going through all the literature because I wanted to know what pieces were really meant for me to play. Because I think it's very personal. Mm-hmm. All art, music or visual, all art is subjective.
Of course.
Yes, mm-hmm. And so I wanted to have the repertoire in me that could express me personally, that I was involved with that particular composition. So I went carefully through all of the literature to see what was for me. And then when I was in late 40s, I went through it again. And I said, I was right. I chose the right thing.
On what sort of musical literature you rely most your own musical personality? I mean,
Rachmaninoff, Tchaikovsky, Chopin, Liszt, Beethoven, I mean, you know, Mozart, Bach. We have such incredible literature in classical music. It's a wealth that's phenomenal. And I always say that particularly Russia is blessed with having been in a strategic geographical position of being both East and West. So you can pick the sounds of the entire world. And for almost 2 centuries, Russia is prominent in classical music with very famous musicians and composers. I mean, when you think of the very famous composers that came out of the 19th century, 20th century, that the world, all over the world, they know and love, it's incredible.
In the United States, which Russian composers are loved most?
Well, like here, Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, Prokofiev, Shostakovich, all of these people that were so fantastic. Scriabin. Mm-hmm. It's a Rimsky-Korsakov, César Cui, Borodin. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Mm-hmm. This is almost 53 years has passed since you. What is still your most brightful remembrance about this event during 1958?
Well, first, just from the time I was 5 years old, my parents gave me a child's picture history book of the world, and I was thrilled to see many different places. But when I came to the beautiful photograph of the Church of San Basil, I said, Mommy, Daddy, take me there. And how fortunate, a few years later, I was there. That was a memory. And the second great memory was walking the staircase of Moscow Conservatory, the Great Hall. And that particular night, it was about 11 o'clock close to 11. My time for practicing on the piano was 11 o'clock. And the person before me was Nadia Gedanova, a wonderful pianist from Paris. And she was playing, as I walked up the stairs, she was playing the Opus 33 E-flat minor Etude Tableau of Rachmaninoff. And that music just was overwhelming, and it fit the extraordinary emotional experience of being in the Great Hall of Moscow Conservatory.
Really, you experienced it that way?
Yes, exactly that way.
And after the competition, when you came to Moscow several times,
Yes.
have you
Each time.
changed? Or,
Each time it triggers the emotions that are so deep and lasting forever.
I'm wondering why you feel such sort of compassion for this great hall in Moscow.
Oh,
And
because
why?
it's very hallowed ground. And so is the conservatory in St. Petersburg and the Philharmonic. Oh, fantastic hall. But you have two great halls. And we are not even talking about the Bolshoi, the Theatre. I mean, what an incredible world icon.
Do you remember maybe your talks, your conversations with famous Russian musicians during the competition?
Oh yes, and it's such a thrill. I remember so well how very kind Mr. Shostakovich was to me. And it was at that time his son, Maxim, is a conductor, pianist, you know. And he was just a young boy then, and it was so nice. Many times I saw Maxim a year and a half ago, and every time I can't believe how wonderful your father was. He was so kind to me. And of course, my dear, very dear friend, Slava Rostropovich. Oh, how I loved him. And he and his lovely wife, Galina Vishnevskaya, and their wonderful daughter, Olga. And she's doing such a great work with the Rostropovich Foundation. Yes. It's so important what she is doing.
Do you know about this story when you played and the jury put their marks and their points, and that Sviatoslav Richter gave you 25 points, and for the competitors only 0?
I heard about that. It was so sweet. And Richter was such a, he was such a nice person and so nice to me that time. And Gilels was, what a great pianist.
Did he really off stage came to you and kissed you as a gratitude?
You heard the story?
Yeah.
Oh God, because I would never tell the story, because the reason I would never tell the story, may I tell you?
Yeah.
Because it was so impressive to me, it was so shocking to me. I said later, maybe it was not true. Maybe I dreamed that. It didn't happen. I cannot tell anyone that for fear that I was in a trance.
Was it too personal, too intimate remembrance?
Yeah, it's true. But I was so thrilled because the people were so kind. And in the audience was Queen Elizabeth of the Belgians, a very great lady, and a musician. And she and her daughter, ex-Queen Marie-José of Italy. And I was so thrilled to finally meet her, because her competition in Belgium had been so wonderful. And it had been, oh my goodness, she gave the prizes to David Oistrakh and Gilels and all these fantastic, Flier and so many people. And it was just thrilling to meet her. And it was wonderful to see how revered she was by Russian people. Oh yes, very, very.
You played all over the world after your gold medal here in Moscow, and you can evaluate different audience in different countries. What's your attitude towards Moscow, especially Moscow audience?
Well, I always say my favorite audience is the audience that likes me.
What do you think? How did it happen that you came to the competition that year?
Well, the story that I have heard, there was so much technical advancement all over the world. And the musicians met, and they said, everybody is talking about technical things and doing this, electrical this, and flying there, and doing this, and what in the world. Why aren't they talking about great music? And so, as I've heard, Shostakovich and Gilels, Richter, Rostropovich, they all got together and they said, why don't we have a competition have it named for our great Tchaikovsky. So they sent the notice in September of 1957, and I was in Kilgore, Texas, at home with my parents, and I got a call from Alexander Greiner, who was the concert manager. You must go, Van. You will love this. I just know. I have a good feeling. And
but for you, it wasn't the first competition that you participated.
No. No, I had other competitions, but international. I had never been outside my country. This was my first trip, and so it was very thrilling. And my mother, who was my first teacher and only teacher till I was 17 when I went to the Juilliard, and she wanted me to study with Rosina Levine. And so I said, "Oh, Mother, you must go with me." And she said, "No."
Why she refused to?
You are over 21, and you know, life is up to you. And you know, I could not help you when you're on the stage, because as in life, you rise and fall by your own decisions, on stage and off stage.
But she could support you just being in the audience.
Well, her thoughts I could feel very strongly, but she was very wise, because it's very true. When you go on the stage, you have no time to ask, what should I do?
When you are on the stage, what are you thinking about? About the music that you are going to perform?
Well, first of all, you're thinking about what the composer wanted. Because in classical music, it is expression and interpretation. Because as you read the score, it calls for pianissimo or forte or crescendo, diminuendo. It has to be as you feel a crescendo and diminuendo. Now that each person is different. And so as you go out onto the stage, it is not for you that you play. It is for them. So it places an extra burden of responsibility, because you must give them what your thoughts are of the meaning of the work of this composer.
I see.
So it gives a very different feeling.
But how do you feel on stage? I mean, there are different types of pianists, of musicians, of performers. And do you feel like being a public speaker on stage? Or you're just inviting the audience into your inner thoughts, into your inner feelings?
Exactly, that's exactly right. Because you are expressing what you think was his words, or the words of the composer.
And another question about this style of interpreting. I mean, do you feel like being just sort of conveying a message that the composer gave to his work?
Yes.
Or you just trying to recompose it during?
No, because you cannot. In classical music, there is no such thing as self-indulgence. Self-indulgence is no. You must be true to the composer, express and interpret his thoughts.
To be a good, fine, genius musician, what does it mean for you? I mean, do you have some?
Well, I've never thought that about me. I'm just so grateful that I know how to read music.
For you, what is important about sincerity, about this truthfulness?
Very important, because you're truthful in how you interpret or decide what is the scope of the architecture of the piece, because all great music has a very definite architecture.
Of course.
And it's so amazing when you view the piece in your mind, because when you play the first note, you must see the last note.
What do you think of, first of all? Maybe you invite some illusions, maybe you read literature, poetry. What helps you to understand music more?
Well, I think that life it gives you so many signals of what is, as a book title I saw it, The Romance of Life. And it's so big in scope and it has so many different characters, life. It has so many different aspects and different viewpoints, and so many different things. Till music is very complicated too. And then you decide how this will function and give to an audience.
Let's go back to this your participation in the competition. You weren't intimidated by this situation of Cold War to go to Russia that year?
Oh, in 1958?
Yeah.
Well, I had read in the newspapers in the United States, but I knew nothing about it when I got here.
And you felt?
I felt at home. I felt very good, and the people were so sweet. Never have I ever had an uncomfortable moment.
You said in your interviews so many times that Tchaikovsky competition completely changed your life.
Well, it did.
If you never came here, what do you think your career, which path would it take?
I have no idea. I often think if I had not come here, I have no idea, because it was such a thrill for me to be here and to have this kind of audiences you have. Your audiences know music, really, in a depth that's wonderful. And they feel with you what you're trying to say. They really do have this communication. And they send such inspiration. It's so inspiring to play in Russia. Yes, it really is.
Just I'm wondering why, this saying about that there is no profit in your own country. Why you made your name here in Russia and you were never noticed in the USA? Why?
I don't have any idea, and I'm so grateful for Russia giving me a name, because it is true. Because Vän Klaibern, when I come to Russia, I'm so thrilled that I.
Which name do you prefer? Vän
Vän Klaibern, no, here. As a matter of fact, I never said to anybody in 1958, "Oh, we burn it." I never told anybody. So then, after I returned home, and then they found out that we pronounced it a certain way, and then they were trying to change the Cyrillic spelling. So when I found out about it, I sent a letter to Izvestia and to Pravda and to the other newspapers. I said, please, keep me my name. I love my name in Russia.
Since you triumphed here in Moscow, you've been an idol, really, and a very loved pianist and musician, and very welcomed one in Moscow and Russia. But for you personally, who are your own idols in music?
Well, it's funny because my mother's hero was Rachmaninoff, and when I was 4 years old, it was the November 14th of 1938. Rachmaninoff came to Shreveport, Louisiana, where we were living. And my mother was on the committee that brought Mr. Rachmaninoff. And, I knew his recordings from the Victrola machine. Yes, I knew his playing. And my mother had heard him many times in person. And so, I was looking forward to that. And as life has, when you're young, I caught the chicken pox. And I could not go to the concert. And my mother came back home and she was telling me all about how wonderful it was. And so, yes. So then time passed, and of course his recordings were so fantastic, and his music is so fantastic. And then when I came back from the competition in 1958 to New York, I got to meet Princess Volkonsky, his wife, his daughter, Irina Rachmaninoff. And we became friends, and it was so wonderful. Now, of course, I met her daughter, Sophie, and now, today, I know his great-grandchildren. And we're also good friends, Natalie Wanamaker and Allison. Mm-hmm. And, they're such sweet people. Such sweet people.
Mr. Klaibern, one musical critic said that after this golden medal in Tchaikovsky competition, you were working too hard to catch up your own fame. Is it true?
Well, I think probably because you always want to play well and you always want to do your best, And so if you're very self-critical, it's a normal thing.
I've heard that you did over 150 concerts a year.
Yes.
Was it hard for you?
It was strenuous. Yes.
And how many years you kept?
For several years. It was a lot. Yes. But I forgot to tell you when we were talking about Rachmaninoff. When I was here, before I left St. Petersburg or Leningrad, I had gone to say my farewell to Tchaikovsky's cemetery. He's buried there. So when I got to the grave, I was standing there with Genreta Balayeva, who from the Ministry of Culture, and I said, Genra, do you think they would let me take a portion of the lilac bush to take back with me? She said, oh, I'm sure the Russians will let you do it. She said, I don't know whether they will let it into the United States. I said, well, we can pray. I took it, and when the Secretary of Agriculture saw this, yes, please, come right in. Oh, yes, they welcomed it. And Irina Volkonsky, the Rachmaninoff, and Kirill Kondrashin, and I went to Rachmaninoff's cemetery grave, and we planted the lilac bush. And I want to tell you, it is still living, still thriving, and people know about it. Yes.
Fantastic.
Isn't that a sweet story? I was so thrilled that everything worked so beautifully.
Mr. Klaiberg, how did your knowledge of Russian culture started, besides music?
Well, I think it probably was just reading, of course, and knowing a few friends who had friends in Russia, and we had some friends who had been in architecture, and they came here in 1908 for 6 months to study architecture, and people like that, that you cross your life, and it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. You don't teach much piano.
Teach? No, I never thought. I knew enough to teach.
You didn't have time for it.
Well, I always thought that I listened to some people and make a suggestion, but I was always reluctant to teach. But I
It's so strange, when a musician just maybe not over with their career, but they start teaching and just to give their experience to younger generation. To communicate.
Thank
you. But I know that you had master classes.
Yes, that was the second one I ever did.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is the most important that you, as a experienced pianist and musician, want and have to convey to these young people who just start their career?
Yes, well, the main thing is you must be sure that that's what you want, because it's forever. Mm-hmm. For better or worse, whatever, you will always be there in music, and giving of yourself and your time, and it's very important to be completely devoted to it.
Mm-hmm. What about your feelings of this new generation of musicians, of pianists? I mean, their aspirations, their thoughts, their way of living. Is it like your own generation, or we are different now?
Well, there are differences. Of course, each generation has a new definition, I think. Yes, and that's normal. And what is so interesting here in Russia, and I see over the stretch of time, that the the genuine interest in the important, great things in life are still evident in their mind. And that is a very wonderful thing. The values.
After this first Tchaikovsky competition, let us go back to this event. Do you learn much about the latest competitions?
I just know that there's some wonderful, you mean the one we're in now, that there's some wonderful talents, very extraordinary, wonderful talents.
As in the early 60s, how did you come to this decision to organize your own competition?
Well, that was not I.
Really?
That was a man who was a friend of my mother's, in music. He was a musician, a teacher. And he had the National Guild of Piano Playing. That was his, he founded that. And he came to a dinner that was being held in my mother's honor in November of 1958. And he said, I think it's time that we start a piano competition, international. And I have a check here, a good bit of money, and I want it to be named for my good friend, Rilda B. Klybern's little boy band. I was still regarded as a little boy, and it was sweet. It was so touching and so nice. And so I went, we were all shocked. So we went back to the hotel and I said, Mother, oh, this is too much. She said, don't worry. She said, Earl was trying to be nice to me. Nothing, no, you don't have to worry. And then when it suddenly materialized, we were all so surprised, so I didn't have anything to say.
But have you any idea about maybe to model this competition, to organize this competition as a model to Tchaikovsky competition?
Oh, well, yes. I mean, it has the roots. The only thing about it was I added, and I insisted that there be chamber music. And that was because I love some of the chamber music repertoire. It's so, I mean, they're just unbelievable works for chamber music. So we added that. That was the only item.
How do you live these days?
Oh, right. Well, I live in Fort Worth, and I love Texas, and I've said to many of my Russian friends when I was here in 1958, I said, you must come to Texas, because Texas and Russia are so close in certain ambiance, and oh please. And when they started to come to Fort Worth, and had many friends who come, they said, you know, Van, I think maybe you're right. It feels something unusual. It feels like, I said, no, we're very close, very close. It's true. Yeah.
What are your favorite places in Moscow? I mean, you would love to visit.
Well,
probably during this stage.
Oh, no, absolutely. As I was saying, I'm so sorry that the Bolshoi Opera is not open. But, you have so many wonderful restaurants. Oh my goodness, the food is so divine, and so, and the beautiful hotels. And this hotel is wonderful, and I love the National Hotel, which I stayed so many times. Oh, you have so many wonderful places. And the Pushkin Museum, as we were today, we were at the Glinka Museum, oh my, and the apartment of Golden Vaser. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful place.
And you played this day in Golden Vaser?
Golden Vaser, many years ago, yes, I did.
Up today?
No, I just struck it. Only for camera. And so, what was...
but what you felt when you were just touching?
Oh yes, and what a wonderful memory I have of that. And then, what thrilled me so much, they gave me a photograph that I completely didn't know existed of Sofronitsky and me at the Scriabin apartment. Oh, I loved that day so much.
I heard that Alexander Borisovich Goldenvezer, he was one of your admirers, and he was crying during your performance.
He was so sweet and kind to me. He was just so wonderful, and of course I was so awed by his presence. He was so, my goodness, he was a classmate, you know, with all these incredible pianists, Scriabin, Rachmaninoff, oh my goodness. Oh.
Mr. Klybern, we're so happy to have you.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here. This is so wonderful.
It's a wonderful event.
And congratulations for all the wonderful things you and your colleagues do for music. And it's so important as never before.
You know, when you go to the concert hall as just a listener, not a...
Oh, I love to do that.
What do you expect what kind of emotions do you expect to get?
No, I want them to tell me about this piece, of the piece of music they're playing. It's their eyes and ears, not mine. And they will tell me what they think. It's like someone said, when you go to a concert, the performer takes you through their garden. And that's true.
Have you experienced probably when you listen to some young musicians and you realize you understand that you can learn something from their playing?
Absolutely. Yes.
And after that, can you change your own?
Yes. Oh, yes. Because here's
understanding of it.
And here's the beautiful thing about classical music. It never is the same. Each time you hear a great piece of music, you will find something new that you didn't hear before. It's absolutely true.
Probably that's the reason why it is great.
Mm-hmm. The great music you'll hear every time something
it's
you didn't hear before.
In its content.
Exactly.
I know this famous book by Norman Lebrecht, Who Killed Classical Music. What do you think about it?
He what?
Who Killed Classical Music?
Who killed?
Yeah.
K-I-L?
Yes.
He
Have
did?
you heard about this book? No.
I'm sorry. Really? Oh, well.
It caused so many controversy about
Oh,
this
my.
stuff.
He's unhappy. Maybe.
Probably.
I didn't know.
Do you divide for yourself between classical music and popular music, or there is just in the world good and bad music?
Well, I think it's very good if young people today know what is classical music and what is popular music. But sometimes they don't quite understand what is popular and what is classical. And that's good to know the difference. Because we all love something pretty or entertaining, you know, but classical music is not entertainment.
What sort of influence classical music relies on young generation?
Well, the one thing that is beautiful to remember, classical music will never die. It is forever. There are other things that come and they go. They are fads. Classical music is forever.
That's great. And we are happy that we all belong to this.
That's so true. So true.
Mr. Клайберн, do you know any Russian words?
Я понимаю больше, чем говорю. It's just очень трудно. Но заниматься.
You know, here I'm representing Orfey's radio station, and your brilliant interview would be on air. And could you please tell several words to our audience, if you can, in Russian?
I just want to say большое спасибо for all their kindness. It was so wonderful. And you've been so kind. Oh, yes.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much.